Thank you. Good evening, students. Very happy to see you come on time and start the session and acknowledging that you have already entered. Very nice to greet you all. So, Ashlisha, आपको ये पूछना है कि GST preparation कैसे करूं and how to handle anxiety and bad thoughts or lot of questions. So be cool at your exams at the time of preparation. At the time of preparation, Sagar, concentrate on your studies and don't concentrate on anything else. That is the key. And at the exam time, don't get distracted. There are a lot of things to distract nowadays. So don't get distracted in those things. That is very much important. That's how you will be able to achieve those simple things. I will not tell much. Follow these simple things and you will achieve your goal. Shlisha, how to do GST preparations? And you were asking some question on registration. Okay. For normal taxpayers, information of outward supplies is auto-populated in GST or 2A or 2B. It is auto-populated in both the formats, in both 2A and 2B. Please explain the box part of page number 32. Okay, box part of page number 32. Okay, so what do you see here is there are two due dates, because for a QRMP scheme person, the due dates varies from 22nd or 24th. Okay, for some states it is 22nd and for some states it is 24th. For a monthly taxpayer, the due date is just 20th. But for a QRMP person, it is 22nd or 24th, depending on which state he is in. Okay. So that's why you will see that there are two due dates for persons who are registered in this state, right? We know that GST registration is state specific. So if you are in a state of Chhattisgarh, then your due date, if you're under QRMP, will be 22nd. If you are under the state of Madhya Pradesh, then also it will be 22nd. If you are under Gujarat, also 22nd. So all of these states, if you have taken your registration in this state, then it will be 22nd. If you are registered in the state of Himachal Pradesh, then your due date will be. So based on which state you have taken registration, that will be the registration state. Like if you are having multiple registrations and one registration is there in Chhattisgarh, one registration is there in Himachal Pradesh. So for Chhattisgarh returns, you have to file by 22nd. Okay. And for Himachal Pradesh, you have to file by 24th. So here the due date says 22nd day or of the month succeeding such quarter, which means it is a quarterly return. So at the end of the quarter, after that end, by the 22nd, you have to file. So if we are seeing of the first quarter, January to March, then by April 22nd, you have to file if you are from these states, and you have to file by 24th if you are in these states. Clear? Can we write as per the provisions of GST Act instead of specifying the particular section number? So that is the best thing to do, Ishwar, if you do not know the section, but that will not carry weightage. Yes, that you are covering up your answer, but wherever predominant sections like section 10 is for composition supply, section 7 is on supply. Those sections you cannot find any escape, but for other sections you can do it, but major sections you'll have to remember. सर आपने जीएसटी में कॉन्सेप्ट समझाए, क्वेश्चंस भी किए, बट जब मॉक टेस्ट पेपर देखा तो बहुत टिपिकल लगा व्हाट टू डू. मतलब मॉक टेस्ट पेपर में टिपिकल लगा मतलब अगर आप पूरे चैप्टर्स पढ़ लेंगे तब आपको वो समझ में पक्का आ जाएगा. देयर विल नॉट बी एनी इश्यू विद द मॉक टेस्ट पेपर. कैन यू एक्सप्लेन सुओ मोटो रजिस्ट्रेशन? मैडम वो रजिस्ट्रेशन चैप्टर में कवर हो चुका है. देन यू हैव टू रीचेक द रजिस्ट्रेशन चैप्टर. बट इन क्रिस्प में मैं समझाना चाहता हूं कि जब ऑफिसर ने आपका टर्नओवर क्रॉस हुए देख लिया है, देन ही हिमसेल्फ कैन रजिस्टर विदाउट यू मेकिंग एन एप्लीकेशन. जनरली रजिस्ट्रेशन कब होता है? व्हेन यू मेक एन एप्लीकेशन, राइट? लेकिन इन केस ऑफ सुओ मोटो रजिस्ट्रेशन यू डोंट हैव टू मेक एन एप्लीकेशन. The officer will give you a registration without you making an application. That is called suo moto registration. Why is there a difference in furnishing dates between the states? So that they can get extra time for states which need some extra time, and there is not too much of a load on one day. पूरे इंडिया के लोग अगर एक ही दिन फाइल करेंगे तो फिर जीएसटी का सिस्टम इतना बर्डन झेल नहीं पाएगा, that so many people are accessing the system. That's why it is split between these 2 days. Ms. Kuhu Gupta, GST कौन से upload नहीं है? Because most of the notes I'm seeing that it is uploaded. Please check that are you checking at the appropriate place? Because I am seeing that on my login, lot of PDFs have been uploaded, and I can see that up till time of supply and value of supply, it has been uploaded. Others which is not, I understand that I'll again push them, but at least till time and value of supply, it has been uploaded. Please check that. कॉम्पोजिशन डीलर कुछ परचेज करेगा तो उससे जीएसटी क्रेडिट मिले नहीं मिलेगा? यस, कॉम्पोजिशन डीलर वॉट एवर ही परचेजेस उसको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, क्योंकि उसे उसका स्कीम ही ऐसा है कि आप सप्लाई करो एट लोअर प्राइस पे या लोअर रेट पे और आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. द स्कीम इटसेल्फ इज लाइक दैट, तो इसलिए उसको कुछ भी क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. ओके, तो हम लोग रजिस्टर रिटर्न्स का डिस्कस कर रहे थे. वी वर डिस्कसिंग ऑन क्यूआरएमपी स्कीम. ठीक है, नाउ when you should apply, when you should opt out, and the payment part, right? So we had discussed this QRMP scheme completely. Now, what is the details he will give in a GSTR 3B return? This we were discussing, that in a regular GSTR 3B return, you will provide the details of GSTN, legal name and trade name, the trade period, tax period, and then you will give summarized details of outward supplies. You will give the details of the outward supplies, details of inward supplies, which is liable to reverse charge because you have to pay GST and the reverse charge. Then you will give summarized details of interstate supplies, which you are making to unregistered persons, composition taxable persons, and UIN holders. Separately, you will have to give this information. Then in your eligible ITC, you have to mention details of ITC which is available, ITC which is reversed, and then comes the balance net ITC. After net ITC, you have to mention what are all the ITC which is ineligible, for which you have not taken the credit, but you have to give a separate disclosure. Then value of exempt, nil rated, and non-GST inward supplies. Even though there is no tax implication on this, as a matter of disclosure, you have to disclose what is the value of exempt, nil rated, and non-GST inward supplies. Okay. Then payment of taxes happens, and then the TDS and TCS credit, whatever you have claimed. Now there is a requirement of nil return. When you don't have any business, still you have to file a nil return, both GSTR1 and GSTR3B. If you don't have any transaction, you have to still report a nil return. So there's a question here that in this month, I don't have any supplies. Okay, so can I file GSTR1 and GSTR3B as a nil return? Yes, so mandatory to file nil return. Okay, mandatory to file nil return. So will he file GSTR1, which is your outward supplies nil return, and will he file GSTR3B also nil returns? Many people are saying yes. Everybody is saying yes. Okay, Aisha Patka is coming up and saying 3B cannot be nil. Awaiting for more response if I get some different answer. Hardik, so you are twisting my question. My question was only that if I have nil outward supply. If I don't have outward supply, will I file nil return? You are adding some more words saying that if you have outward, if you don't have any outward supply or inward supplies, then you will file nil. I was silent on my inward supplies. I was only saying that my outward supplies are nil. So how can you assume that I don't have any inward supplies? Okay, so you have to understand the question in a right manner. Okay. GSTR1 is a statement of outward supply and GSTR3B is a return. Now, again, concentrate on the details of supplies, what we mentioned in the GSTR3B. In GSTR3B, you will have summarized details of outward supplies. Then you have summarized details of inward supplies liable to reverse charge. Then you will have summarized details of interstate supplies. Then you will have eligible ITC. So even if you don't have any supplies for this month, you are right that your GSTR1 will be nil. But that doesn't mean that your GSTR3B will be nil. Because if GSTR3B should be nil, you should have zero outward supplies as well as zero inward supplies, which means you should not have any credit for this month. Is that the case? I was silent on that, which means you could assume anyways. When I've said nothing about it, it means there is some inward supplies. So you will not be able to file nil GST returns. If you file a nil GST returns, then you cannot claim the credit. Okay, so if you have any inward purchases on which reverse charge is payable, or you have any inward purchases on which you have to claim credit, in that situation, you cannot file a nil GSTR3B return. Got it? Yes, now I'm getting correct answer. Mayur saying that yes, 3B cannot be nil since 2A, 2B will be filed by the supplier, so you have to claim it. Nil return if there is no outward supply in case of GSTR1, Aparna, but in case of GSTR3B, you have to see three things: outward supply, inward supply is liable to reverse charge, and your input tax credit. Yes, correct. You were right, Aisha. Inward supply is auto-populated. It is auto-populated, but if you just click nil return, then that auto-populate also will go out. If it is auto-populated, that is not a nil return. Nil return means the whole data should be nil. Okay. Even your outward supply, your inward supply should be nil. If there is some auto-populated data in your GSTR 2A, right, and that is again auto-populated in your 3B, you will have to check it and then you have to file it. Because when you say nil return, it means all your data goes away. Whichever is auto-populated also goes off. So you have to be careful that you should not select nil return where you have any kind of inward supplies. If you have started your business, there is no inward supplies, there's no purchases, then you could file an inward nil return, not in all the cases. Nil return has to be filed even if there is no supply during the taxable period. That's right. Harshit, you have to be calm while reading it also, because I am not just teaching it, I have also read it. So if you keep reading it again and again, then you become calm and this becomes a cakewalk for you. So, and I think it is very interesting subject. Just read it calmly, you will get it. Aparna, it means there is a zero return in 3B. Yes, there is a nil return in 3B when you don't have any kind of transaction, neither on the outward supply side, neither on the inward supply side. Then in this case, what will be the answer? In my question, when I say that if there is no outward supply, it means that you will file nil GSTR1 returns, but your GSTR3B may not be nil. You will have to check whether there is any input tax credit appearing in your GSTR2A and 2B. If nothing is appearing there, then you have to see if there is any supplies from your books. You will have to see, have you got any invoices from those suppliers on which you have to pay reverse charge. If that is also not there, then you will file a nil return. If one of these three things, outward supplies, inward supplies, and inward supplies from persons on which you have to pay reverse charge, if any one of this is yes, then you will have to file a non-nil return, which means you have to give data of that transaction. Got it? So if last previous month ITC is available and the current previous not now ITC, then also will nil return TB will be there. Didn't understand your question, Miss Pooja. Can you please ठीक से बता सकते हो आप क्या बोल रहे हो? आप हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हो, मैं समझ सकता हूँ. The wordings of Harshit are not thing. We have to keep reading it. So these are all legal words, so they have to be very crisp and clear. That's why they are worded in such a way. But if you keep reading it, if you don't understand a provision, just read that second time. You will get some understanding, and read it for the third time. You'll get a complete understanding. And if you don't understand, then you have your board of studies material, which is replication of the section, and it is trying to make you understand in simple terms. You will get it. If all the conditions are met, then we can file nil return. Yes, when you don't have outward supplies, you don't have inward supplies, and you don't have supplies on which RCM is payable, then you can file nil return. Nishtala, what is the answer for my question? That's what I had said, that when you have no outward supplies, you will file nil GSTR1, but you will not file nil GSTR3B. You will file a regular 3B wherein outward supplies will be 0, but inward supplies on which RCM is payable, there could be some transaction there. If by mistake I filed nil return this month and I had some credits to be claimed, then I can claim it in the next month. You have to tell me, Ninad, that what is the time limit to claim the credit? In your input tax credit chapter, you have to tell me, your question is for you because you have completed the input tax credit chapter. If you have missed out the credit in this month, when will you claim it? Please explain non-GST inward supplies. Non-GST inward supplies are those supplies on which GST is not leviable. Okay, so on those inward supplies, what GST is not applicable, which are those 5 petroleum products and liquor. Okay, liquor for human consumption. On this, there is no GST, right? So on that, you will disclose that as a non-GST inward supply. नीनत देसाई 180 days नहीं सर. अगर प्रीवियस मंथ का कोई इनवॉइस लेफ्ट आउट हो गया है बट करंट मंथ में कोई भी ट्रांजैक्शन नहीं है, तो क्या ये निल रिटर्न होगा? लास्ट मंथ का इनवॉइस लेफ्ट आउट हो चुका है, तो फिर आप उसको इस मंथ में रेक्टिफाई करके ऐड करोगे, करेक्ट? तो फिर वो इस महीने का आपको निल रिटर्न नहीं होगा. इट विल बी अ रिटर्न विथ ट्रांजैक्शन, क्योंकि आप प्रीवियस मंथ का ट्रांजैक्शन इस मंथ में रिपोर्ट करते हो. लेकिन अगर आप चाहते हो कि लास्ट मंथ का रिपोर्ट में इस मंथ भी नहीं करो, और इस मंथ में कुछ ट्रांजैक्शन नहीं है, तो आपका रिटर्न नील रिटर्न हो जाएगा. Correct. Vaishali Bindal has given you a correct answer, Neenal. She's saying that you can claim it. Okay. If you are missed to claim the credit in that particular month, then you can claim it in next month, further next month, further next month, maximum by the 30th November or the annual return, whichever is earlier. Okay. GSTR 3B is filed when there is a outward supply, inward supply, liable to reverse charge, and ITC available. Correct. Correct. The ITC will be claimed in next month, not only next month, in any of the further subsequent months up till the 30th November of the next month. That is October का returns जब तक आप file कर रहे हुए तब तक you can claim it. So in GSTR1 we write both time limit, that is on or before 10th day and 11th day. So you will mention that the act says it is the due date is 10th, but it is extended by the power given to the commissioner, and with this extension it is extended up to 11th. That is what you will mention. So supply of services वाले केस में place of supply समझ में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है जब पर्सन ट्रैवल कर रहा है हो तब. ठीक है. आपका क्वेश्चन जब हम नेक्स्ट प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग सेशन करेंगे ना तब आप बताना, बिकॉज वील हैव स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस आल्सो ऑन दैट, तब आपके क्वेश्चन आंसर कर पाएंगे. If all the inward supply, outward supply and RCM all are nil, okay. But in previous month they have ITC credit, but in this month they have to file nil return. As ITC has to carry it forward, we can say that nil return, yes. So even if you file a nil return, whatever credit was lying and it was sitting idle, right? And that is sitting in your electronic credit ledger. Even if you file nil return for this month, that electronic credit ledger will get carried forward. That will not get exhausted. Okay, so that will get still carried forward. You can file nil return for that. That doesn't mean that your old credit, what was lying, that will lapse. That will still not lapse. That will get carried forward. Okay, lot of questions. I'll take two more questions, then we'll proceed. Sir, for example, March month, a person purchased goods whose ITC is available, say 5,000, and in the month of April, that person did not purchase anything, then he will be required to file nil returns or no? In March month, the person purchased and ITC is available, and in the month of April, that person did not purchase. So then March month will be a regular return and April month will be a nil return, because in April month, he does not have anything to claim it. Time limit for filing claiming ITC shall be earlier of annual return or 30th November, and GST 3B are filed every month. That means you can claim ITC even after furnishing nil return. Yes, that's right. How to ask doubt, Chandan? How you are asking questions, similar way you ask your doubts, I will be able to see it. What is the penalty of late filing? We'll come to that. There is a special provision on penalty. Generally, there is a late filing fees, no penalty as such. So you have interest and implication of late filing fees. Eleven is applicable to all. For monthly filers, Vaishali, it is 11th. For QRMP scheme filers, it is 13th. Okay. Okay. So we understood the requirements of nil returns. Now this nil returns can be filed through an SMS also, saying that nil returns, and there is a number which is given. So you just send a message and your return gets filed. That is also possible. Now this cannot be filed from anybody's mobile number. It has to be filed from the registered mobile number. So each GST registration when we take, we give one number as a registered mobile number. So when you file this nil returns with from that registered mobile number, then the return is considered as a filed registered nil return. Okay. Now we have a provision of revised return. कि आपका original return में गलती हो गया, then you can file a revised return. How will you file this revised return? Is through making corrections in the return and not actually filing a revised return. So let's read this. In GST, since the returns are built from the details of individual transactions, actually there is no requirement of having a revised return. So there is no particular return ka revision, like how you have GSTR 3B. There is no concept of original 3B and a revised 3B. There is only one 3B, which is the 3B. Okay. Now, any need to revise a return may arise due to the need to change a set of invoices or debit notes. Instead of revising the return which is already submitted, the system allows changing the details of those transactions, like what invoices, debit notes, and credit notes, what we have filed in the 3 GSTR1 of any of the previous months, that can be changed in the current month. Okay, by doing a amendment. So the amendment itself is equivalent to a revision. You don't have a special revised return as such. So any correction in the invoice number can be done through a amendment in the subsequent month's return. Now this time limit, there is a time limit by when you can rectify, like how we had discussed time limit for claiming credit. Similarly, those dates apply here. You can file a revision or you can do a rectification. You can do an amendment. That is the right word. You can do an amendment by the 30th day of November following the end of the financial year to which such details pertain, or the date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. Same, that time limit will apply here also, within which you can file a revised return. ITC of this year can be carried forward to next year. Yes, once you claim it, once you file this within the time limit, then it is there with you and you can claim it anytime in the future as well. There's no time limit after you have claimed it. So once you have claimed it, it is locked. You can claim it for any number of years. This time limit is seen in time of supply as well, right? Okay, now that was the return for regular taxpayer. Now return for a composition taxpayer. What kind of a return will a composition taxpayer file? He will file a return in form GSTR 4. Like how we are GSTR 3B for a regular taxpayer, we have a return for a composition taxpayer, which is in GSTR 4. Under which section? Section 39(2) and Rule 62. Returns for composition dealer, like how we have QRNP scheme for certain people, but for composition taxpayer, we have ARQP scheme. This is not there in your, this nomenclature of ARQP is not there in your board of studies, but I have given this name so that we can understand how to file a return for a composition dealer. A composition dealer will file the ARQP scheme. What is ARQP? Annual returns, quarterly payments. QRMP, it is quarterly returns, monthly payments, but for all composition dealers. Okay, nothing like everybody, some few have to file monthly, if you have to file quarterly or anything. Everybody will do with this ARQP. Annual, they will file a return, and quarterly make a payment. Okay, the annual return has to be filed in this format called GSTR 4. Okay, this has to be filed by the 30th of April. So आपका 22-23 year खत्म हो गया. Then by 30th April 2023, you have to file one return in GSTR 4. It should be filed by a composition taxpayer who is registered under 10. Only that person can file. A regular taxpayer cannot file it. And you have to make quarterly statement or quarterly statement of payment of self-assessed tax. You have to assess your tax. How much is your supplies? Apply the 1%. Or if you are a manufacturer, then you have to, if you're a restaurant dealer, then you have to do a calculation of 5% and file it. Okay. So either if you're registered as a composition dealer, you will do a quarterly payment in this challan called CMP08. By when you should make a payment, this also by the 18th of the month. Regularly, the monthly returns, it is 20th, but for a composition dealers, quarterly by 18th of the month succeeding the quarter, they have to make this payment, just payment. CMP में आप calculation कीजिए, calculation करके pay कर दीजिए. Inward supplies are auto-populated in GSTR 4A. So GSTR 4 is outward supply, but उनको GSTR 2A या 2B नहीं दिखेगा, उनको GSTR 4A दिखेगा. इस 4A में जो भी inward supply उन्होंने किया है वो दिखेगा. Can they claim ITC? A composition taxpayer cannot claim ITC. So this is only a view option to see from whom they have purchased. Okay, there is some objective saying that आप किसी से purchase करते हो, right? अगर सामने वाला GST pay नहीं किया, so then he will be under default. So from your returns, from your GSTR 4A, they will get to know who is the supplier who is not charged GST. That's the objective of GSTR 4A. But for a composition taxpayer, GSTR 4A doesn't make any sense because he will not claim any credit from that. But when he files the return, he has to give this details. That's why this is relevant. So financially, कुछ relevance नहीं है, but for the purpose of filing returns, it has relevance because from the 4A, he will mention all the details of his inward supplies. Now, what are the basic details he will file in his GSTR 4, which is the return, is, of course, his GSTN, the legal name and trade name, what is the tax period, what is the TDS or TCS credit he's received. Can he go for this? Yes. TDS कब होगा? When he makes supplies to any government entities. So a composition dealer can also make supply to government entities, no restrictions. So if he supplies to government entities, then they will deduct TDS on that. He can claim that, right? TCS also, if he's making any supply through e-commerce, then TCS will be deducted. Then any tax, interest, late fees payable and paid, right? There is a time limit to make the payment by 18th of the end of the quarter. So if he's delaying, then tax he has to pay, interest and late fees also has to be paid. How much is the interest? We know 18%. Late fee means we'll come to once we finish all the returns, we'll discuss on how much is the late fees to be paid. Then if he's claiming any refund from his electronic cash ledger, he has deposited more amount in his electronic cash ledger that he can claim refund. That also details has to come here, saying that how much is the refund he has claimed from the electronic cash ledger. Then what are the details he will mention? Invoice-wise details of the inward supplies from any registered person, whatever inward supplies he's made. He will not claim the credit, but he will mention it. And any receipts from unregistered person also will have to be mentioned. Q, this is for statistics reason. You're right that a composition person cannot claim input tax credit. Then why is this required? This is still required to see how much purchases he is making. Okay, so invoice-wise details of inward supplies from registered person and unregistered person separately. Inward supplies on which tax is to be paid on reverse charge basis, because when he is taking any supplies from a lawyer, from a GTA, okay, even though his outward supply is at lower rate, but he will have to show reverse charge and pay GST on that. Can he claim credit of that? He cannot claim, but he will have to pay reverse charge. Then summary of self-assessed liability as per GST CMP 08. Monthly, quarterly payments, what he's doing, that summary has to come here. Then consolidated tax rate wise details, which means invoice wise details, like how we are doing for in GSTR 1, that invoice wise details is not required to be mentioned. Okay, a composition dealer, very importantly, you have to note this, that he does not have to mention, he will have to maintain the records, but reporting has to be consolidated. Outward supplies, attracting reverse charge, outward supplies are both inward supplies, but he will have to give only rate wise details. How much supplies is made at 1%, generally it will be 1%. If he's into multiple businesses, then 1%, 0.5%, 1%, 2%, and 5% also he has to mention. But generally a composition dealer will be a small dealer, so we'll have only one rate. Then invoice-wise outward supply details are not required. So invoice-wise outward supplies are not required, but invoice-wise details of inward supplies are required. That is how the return is structured. And still, he will also have to file nil GST CMP 08. Say for 1 quarter, he did not make that he has to do in CMP 08. But if he does not have any business, still he'll have to report nil CMP 08. What is CMP? CMP is a challan name, which shows that what is the challan he will pay. Okay. Please explain slide number 39. 39 क्या slide है? 39 is a time limit for doing a rectified return. क्या आप जीएसटी में rectified return है? कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रेक्टिफाइड रिटर्न जीएसटी में नहीं है, लेकिन आपने अगर कुछ गलत डेटा फाइल किया है तो उसको आप अमेंड कर सकते हो. सो द अमेंडमेंट इटसेल्फ इज लाइक अ रेक्टिफाइड रिटर्न. तो आपको फिर से पूरा रिटर्न फाइल करने की जरूरत नहीं है. जब आप अगले महीने का रिटर्न फाइल करते हो तो पर्टिकुलर इनवॉइसेस जो आपने GSTR 1 में फाइल किया पिछले मंथ, उसका आपको अमेंडमेंट में ऑप्शन आएगा, क्लिक ऑन अमेंड. तो फिर पूछेगा वो कौन सा मंथ का अमेंडमेंट है, आप पिछले महीने का बताओगे, तब उस पिछले महीने का इनवॉइस पॉपअप हो जाएगा और उसको आप, सपोज 100 रुपीज था लेकिन एक्चुअल में आपने 110 मेंशन किया है, तो उसको आप एडिट करके 100 कर सकते हो. तो उसको आपने अमेंड कर दिया है, तो इसे अमेंड कहते हैं. ये अमेंडमेंट कर सकते हैं. So please simplify GSTR 4. GSTR 4 is simply a return for a composition taxpayer, which he files on a once in a year basis. Tax period for GSTR 4 is 12 months, which is 1 year. Composition dealer may invert supply of reverse charge, don't get ITC. कॉम्पोजिशन डीलर वैशाली को कॉम्पोजिशन डीलर को आईटीसी मिलता ही नहीं है. तो इवन इफ ही पेज रिवर्स चार्ज, हिज लायबिलिटी इज देयर टू पे रिवर्स चार्ज, बट ही इज नॉट एंटाइटल्ड टू क्लेम आईटीसी. उसको आईटीसी क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. GSTR 4 समझ गए. एनुअल रिटर्न इन GSTR 4 एंड क्वार्टरली पेमेंट इन CMP 08. ठीक है. नाउ what happens that some we know that there is an option, we have discussed this in registration, that when you are registering, at the time of registration you can opt for composition dealer, or after registration at the beginning of the year you can apply for a composition dealer. तो आप रेगुलर टैक्स पेयर हो, अब आपका टर्नओवर कम हो चुका है 1.5 करोड़ के नीचे, यू आर eligible for composition scheme and you feel that you have done a evaluation basis पे you have decided that you can go for composition registration. So from regular taxpayer you can go for composition taxpayer, right? जब आप रेगुलर से composition taxpayer करते हो तब क्या होता है, when you're opting for composition scheme, then the statements or returns relating to the period prior to opting for composition scheme has to be filed. क्योंकि आप जब रेगुलर स्कीम में थे आपका GSTR 1 और 3B लायबल था, तब अब आप जब कॉम्पोजिशन में आ जाते हो तब आपको GSTR 4 और CMP 8 फाइल करना पड़ेगा. बट व्हाट हैपेंस टू द पीरियड प्रायर टू कमिंग इनटू कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम? ठीक है, जैसे 23-24 में आप रेगुलर पे हो, अब 24 1 अप्रैल से आप कॉम्पोजिशन में हो. तब आपको पुराना कंप्लायंस तो कंप्लीट करना पड़ेगा. सो 23-24 का जो भी कंप्लायंस है दैट यू हैव टू डू. सो व्हेन यू शुड डू दिस, दैट मैक्सिमम डेट इज गिवन. कैसा नहीं कि आपने बोलोगे कि मैं बाद में करूंगा, नो. और नेइदर कि मुझे आज ही करना है, बिकॉज फ्रॉम 1 अप्रैल यू हैव टू स्टार्ट कॉम्पोजिशन. और रिटर्न्स का ड्यू डेट अभी अप्रैल के बाद भी फाइल कर सकते हैं. So that's why they have given an option saying that if you're moving from regular scheme to a composition scheme, then you can file the returns, that is GSTR 1 and 3B for your regular period up till what date? Up till the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September, right? यहाँ पे अक्टूबर का डेट नहीं है, तो यहाँ पे नवंबर का चेंज नहीं है. फ्रॉम अ रेगुलर टू कॉम्पोजिशन you have to file that return by the month of September or furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier. ठीक है. So if you're moving from regular scheme to composition scheme, this scheme is saying that आपका पुराना जो भी रिटर्न है उसको फाइल कर दीजिए by the month of September or the due or the filing of annual return, whichever is earlier. अगर आप annual return पहले फाइल कर देते हो तो up till that date, if you're filing it late, then you have to file all your previous returns by the month of September. उसके बाद आप फाइल नहीं कर सकते. Sir, is it just like 3B is monthly, 9 is annual for normal, IFF is monthly, and GSTR 4 is annual for composition? No, you're wrong. For a regular taxpayer, GSTR 3B is monthly and 9 is annual. Now, for a regular taxpayer itself, you have an option to file a quarterly. If you file quarterly, then monthly you will file IFF and quarterly you will file GSTR 3B. Okay. And for composition, it is quarterly CMP 08 and annually GSTR 4. Hope I'm clear. Okay. For composition, it is quarterly CMP 08 and annually GSTR 4. Okay. Sir, how we know 1 year from invoice date if composition dealer changed to regular dealer in composition scheme, and which return filed by composition dealer to fill all stock on that date? No, I didn't get your question. So basically you're saying that when a regular taxpayer moves to composition taxpayer, he will have to file all his regular tax periods returns, correct? He cannot escape that. So that this provision says that by when you have to file it, you have to file it by September, not from the date of invoice, from the for the period itself. For any purchases made for 23-24, you can file it in the return of 23-24. This return, you have to file it by September, not later than that. Okay. Now, if you are moving from regular to composition, this is the thing. Now, from composition to regular, when you're moving, so it means you are exiting from composition. In this case of exit from composition, तो फिर आपको composition का पूरा returns file करना पड़ेगा, right? So you will file your CMP 08 for the period prior to the exit from composition scheme. When you have to file it, CMP 08 का date है 18th. You have to file it by the 18th of the month succeeding the quarter in which the date of withdrawal falls. तो आप जब withdraw करते हो तब तक उस क्वार्टर का आप CMP 08 फाइल करोगे, right? So if you move to the regular, it doesn't mean कि composition का tax जो है वो आप पे नहीं करोगे. Of course you will pay, correct? So you will pay by the 18th of the month succeeding that quarter. जैसे आपका क्वार्टर था Jan to March, April to June, right? अगर आप generally you cannot exit from composition in between because you cannot shift from composition to regular in between the year. You can shift it only at the end of the quarter. तो अगर आप okay composition scheme से withdraw करते हो on February, then for the quarter of Jan, Feb, and March, you have to file your CMP 08 by the 18th and your GSTR 4 for the period prior to the exit, which means जब आप 22-23 फाइल कर रहे हो, 23 को आप बोल रहे हो कि you will exit from composition, then up till March, the full year का जो भी GSTR 4 है वो आपको 30th April तक फाइल करना. ठीक है. Yes, Hemlata, that ITC provision will apply that when you're converting from regular to composition, the ITC which is available will be reversed. Composition taxpayer issues bill of supply. Yeah, that's correct. ठीक है, सो रेगुलर टू कॉम्पोजिशन आपको पुराना फाइल करना है और कॉम्पोजिशन टू रेगुलर कॉम्पोजिशन का रिटर्न्स फाइल करना है. Cancellation of composition registration says that yes, as per section 29(2), if, which we have read before also, if a proper officer can cancel the registration when a person who's paying composition tax has not furnished his return within 3 months. Okay, आपका 1 month का टाइम दिया है, आपने फाइल नहीं किया, आप लेट करो, ठीक है, बट यू कैन नॉट डिले इट बियॉन्ड अ पीरियड ऑफ 3 months from the due date of furnishing of the said return. So don't delay it beyond 3 months. Delay नहीं करना चाहिए, लेकिन कुछ वजह से अगर डिले हो जाता है तो डोंट डिले इट बियॉन्ड 3 months फ्रॉम द ड्यू डेट ऑफ फर्निशिंग द रिटर्न. मतलब 30th अप्रैल का ड्यू डेट है, आपको और 3 महीने दिए जाएंगे, मई, जून और जुलाई. अगर 30th जुलाई 31st जुलाई तक आप फाइल नहीं करते हो तो फिर 1st अगस्त को आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिलेशन करने के लायक है. ठीक है, फ्रॉम द ड्यू डेट ऑफ फर्निशिंग ऑफ योर GSTR4 विच इज 3 months, तब तक आपका डिले माफ किया जाएगा. उसके बाद भी अगर आप फाइल नहीं करते हो तो आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल कर दिया जाएगा. ठीक है, दैट वाज ऑल ऑन कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम. एनी क्वेश्चंस? Can we claim ITC of a stock held on March closing that was purchased in composition scheme? No. In compositions, yeah. Actually, when you move from regular to composition, all your on section 18, you have discussed this, Deepak Jha, that in section 18 says that when you move from regular to composition, then whatever stock is available in the regular that you cannot claim under composition. And similarly, when you move from composition to regular, whatever the stock is held on March, on that you can claim ITC. Sir, composition to regular by threshold limit, compulsorily, then within 30 days, we will have to fill stock details lying immediately preceding date. Then we get ITC of that stock only after 1 year of invoice or stocks of stocks, sir. How the differentiate in stock invoice wise? Vishali, आप थोड़ा क्वेश्चन क्लियरली पूछ सकते हो? आई डेंट अंडरस्टैंड योर क्वेश्चन. ठीक है, conversion, Hemlata, your question is, please explain conversion from composition to regular. Okay, so see, now you have to understand that you are changing your position, that you were under regular, now you are coming to composition. So all your returns under regular has to be filed. Similarly, when you're moving from composition to regular, whatever returns are due for your period under which you are under composition, that has to be filed. So that is what this provision is saying. When you move from regular to composition, do all the compliance what was there under regular scheme. Now, when you're moving from composition to regular, whatever things were there under composition, that has to be filed. Okay, that is what this is saying. GSTR4, when it is applicable, GSTR4 is applicable if when you are registered under a composition scheme. If you're registered under a composition scheme, then GSTR4 is applicable to you. ITC is available under composition scheme is carried forward while opting regular scheme. There is no ITC available at all, Sangeetwani, that under a composition scheme, ITC itself is not available. So how can you carry forward? If something is available, only then you can carry forward. Under composition, it's not available, then how will you carry forward? But on the stock on which you have suffered GST, that can be carried forward. That can be claimed. So in section 18, you would have understood that whatever is the stock, those invoices should not be older than 1 year. So if you are there under composition for 5 years, तो आपको, लेकिन स्टॉक आपका 5 साल पुराना भी पड़ा है, इसका मतलब नहीं कि 5 साल पुराना स्टॉक के ऊपर आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा. सिर्फ 1 साल का स्टॉक जो पड़ा है उसके ऊपर आप क्रेडिट क्लेम कर सकते. Okay. Next is returns for a non-registered taxable person. Before that, getting last moment questions. Can a regular taxpayer move to compositions come at any time during the year or only at the year end? From regular to composition, you can move only at the year end, not before that. But from composition to regular, you can move it any year because why? Composition का limit है, right? 1.5 crores. If you cross 1.5 crores, then you have to move to regular, which we have discussed in the last class. In that case, you will have to move in between the year. You don't have to wait at the year end. From composition to regular, you can move any time of the year. From regular to composition, you have to do only at the year end. Perfect. Now, what is the returns for a non-registered taxable person? A non-registered taxable person will file a return in GSTR 5. Okay, this non-resident taxable person will file a return in GSTR 5. Section 39(5) and Rule 63 is the relevant provisions. A non-resident taxable person, we said he will not file GSTR 3B, but a casual taxable person, he will file 3B. So non-resident taxable person के लिए special return है, right? Now to understand the difference, a casual taxable person is in India. He can claim all his credits. So he will file regular GSTR 1 and 3B. But a non-resident taxable person, he is not entitled to claim all his credit, right? So he can claim only limited credits, correct? So in your input tax credit, you would have learned this. What all credits can a NRTP claim? Is there a time limit period fixed in between we have to apply for conversion from regular to composition? Yes, before the end of the year. So it is generally on the February and March, which you have to apply for going for composition scheme, not before that. ITC can be claimed on the last lot of goods by a regular taxpayer, but if he wants to opt for composition scheme, but he didn't receive his last lot, then he can convert. ITC can be claimed on last lot by a regular taxpayer, right? But if he wants to opt for composition scheme, he didn't receive the last lot, then can he convert? फिर भी he can convert because once he converts, he will receive the last lot and then he can claim the credit on that. If he wants to opt for composition, yeah, then he has to decide because if he's not received the last lot, then on that he will not be able to claim the credit. Correct? So you have to be careful. You have to plan these things. So practical planning will be required in such cases where you have practical challenges. Okay, so there he will have to wait for the last lot. Otherwise, his credit will be lost. So he will have to claim the credit and then convert. But he will lose 1 year because of that. Okay, so I've got the answer. Yes, goods imported by them in India, only that they can claim the credit. Correct. So the date will he can claim credit only of goods which is imported by them in India. Whatever domestic purchases they make, that cannot be claimed. So they can only claim credit of those what they have imported. So only credit on imports can be claimed, not on every other local purchases what they do. Now they do not file GSTR 3B. Even though they're making taxable supplies, they will file a special return called GSTR file, which is a simplified return, and this is to be filed on a monthly basis. Now, the due date of filing is 20 days from the end of the calendar month. So if you see in your study material, you will see that the section in the last date of filing return GSTR 5, it says should be filed by 13 days from the end of the calendar month or within 7 days from the last date of validity period. Okay. Now, you should understand that NRTP registration is a limited time registration. It's not a permanent registration. Your validity of that registration is 6 plus. If they want to extend, they can extend it for another 6 months. So sorry, 3 months plus 3 months, 90 days plus 90 days. They can extend it to 3 plus 3, 6 months. When this is a temporary registration, it is not necessary that they will always be issued from the first of the calendar month. It can be issued in between, correct? So if they have been issued in between a month, for that month, they have to file a return. Then second month, they have to file a return. Third month, they will have to file the return. Fourth month, their validity period is getting over. That 75 days are completed in first 3 months. The fourth month, last 15 days are there. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? That for that 15 days, they have to file it. So they cannot wait for that month to get over, right? So that's why this date is coming like this, that they have to file by 20th day, 20 days from the end of the calendar month or 7 days from the last date of validity period. So consider an example. Listen carefully here. NRTP came, he got the registration from 15th March, right? So for the month of March, he will file by 20th April. For the month of April, he will file by 20th May, right? For the month of May, he will file by 20th June. Now for June, how many days is left? Another 15 days because 90 days का validity है, 75 days, March, April, May में हो गए, June में 15 days है. When the 15th day his registration lapses, he will have to file a return for that month of June. 15th को उसका lapse हो रहा है, then 15 plus 7 days. 7 days from the last date of validity period, which is 22nd June in this case. 22nd tak he will file the returns for the month of June. He will not wait for 20th July because वो तो चला जाएगा, correct? He will cancel his registration and go off. So how do you catch him? इसीलिए उसके लिए by 7 days from the last date of validity period. Another point is why 20 days, sir? The material says it is 13 days. The law says 13 days. जब आप नीचे देखोगे उसके नीचे it says that rule 63 says that GSTR 5 needs to be filed within 20 days. So section में 13 days है, लेकिन rule में extension मिल गया है. So rule we will follow because it's giving a beneficial provision of extending the time limit till 20 days. So हम 20th तक file कर सकते हैं. ठीक है? Monthly filing till 20th or in between the period till 7 days from the last date of the validity period. This contains only details of output and input details. Can an NRTP claim input tax credit? Everybody has given a right question that ITC only on goods imported by them can be claimed. ITC is not available for goods or services which is received within India. Then any interest or penalty shall be paid within the last date of filing GSTR 5 itself. So GSTR 5 के बाद उनको payment करना पड़ेगा. NRTP is not required to file annual return. Annual तक वो रहेगा ही नहीं यहाँ पे, तो फिर उसको annual return का बोझ डालने का क्या फायदा? So he will not be required to file any annual return. He will file monthly return itself. And the validity of registration हमने बता दिया 90 plus 90 days है. Lokesh, you got that it is 13 days, but it is extended, so it is 20 days. Okay, NRTP clear, simple, 1-page presentation, and you're done with the NRTP. कुछ ज़्यादा complicated नहीं. How to calculate the date prior to exiting from composition? So when you convert from composition to regular, your registration certificate will give what is the effective date from when you are considered as a regular registration. So the date before that will be your date of exiting from composition, okay? Which will usually be 31st of March. As I'm saying, if you have to convert from regular to composition, you cannot do in between. You have to do only at the year end. Awesome. GSTR 5 is clear. So let's proceed with the next return, which is GSTR 7. Okay. This is a return for TDS filers, right? We have discussed TDS filers. This is covered under section 39.3 and Rule 66. Who is to deduct TDS? Let us summarize that. TDS is deducted under section 31 on supplies when I make to a government where the contract value is more than 2.5 lakhs. If I make any supply of goods or services to a government and the value of the service is exceeding 2.5 lakhs, then the government will deduct TDS. A TDS deductor, in that case, he is the deductor, right? Because I'm supplying to him, so he will have to deduct TDS. The TDS deductor, that is the government entity, shall furnish a monthly return in GSTR 7. So the TDS deductor will furnish a monthly return in GSTR 7. The last date of filings is the details in GSTR 7 should be filed by the 10th. तो इसमें कुछ गड़बड़ नहीं है. अपने पिछले रिटर्न में गड़बड़ था. That is clarified. That's 20th. Now GSTR 7 TDS deductor has to file the TDS return by the 10th. Now TDS deductor shall be available electronically to the deductees. मतलब जो supplier है उसके statement में ये दिख जाएगा. The supplier can take this amount as credit in the electronic cash ledger. This amount can be used for payment of taxes and a TDS certificate. So deductor को बहुत सारा liability है. First TDS deduct करो, GSTR 7 file करो, फिर उसका tax payment करो और एक GSTR 7A issue करो. इससे मुझे, क्योंकि मैंने उनको सप्लाई किया है, उसने मेरे अमाउंट से कुछ अमाउंट डिडक्ट किया है, उसको फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ डिडक्शन विच इज, उसका डेट है 10th से 5 days, which is by the 15th, he will have to give me a certificate which is called as GSTR 7A. Okay. So many compliance on the government entity. Will they be able to do it? Yes, they're doing it. So they will have to give me GSTR 7A within 5 days of crediting this amount to the government. Now my question is, if you have understood this, fine, otherwise ask your queries. But I have a question to you, that whatever TDS is deducted by this government entity under section 51, will it appear in my GSTR 2A and 2B? Vaishali, a question on a previous thing is, sir, if 90 days end on June 7th, then return of May is 20th June, and for June 14th. Correct. You're right. No, but good question, Vaishali. This is whichever is earlier. Okay. So if you see this GSTR 5, it says that it has to be filed within 13 days or 20 days from the end of the calendar month, or within 7 days from the last day of the validity period of the registration, whichever is early. So you are missed to mention that the important part is whichever is earlier. So if in your good example wherein you have stated that if he's cancel, if his period is ending on 7th June, then for the May also he has to file by the 14th, and for June also he has to file by the June 14th itself. I'll put it over here. Oops. So please explain 90 days validity period again. What I'm saying is the validity period of a NRTP. Once he gets a registration, the registration is valid for 90 days. Now that 90 days, if he says that I am still wanting to continue the business, they can extend it up to a maximum period of 90 days, which means 90 plus 90 हमेशा नहीं रहेगा. 90 plus say if you want 30 days extension, so they can give a 30 days extension. If you're saying I need 100 days more extension, 100 days extension नहीं मिलेगा आपको, up to 90 days extension मिलेगा. Okay, that is the option, that is the requirement of that 90 plus 90 days. Yes, it will appear. If you are saying no, it will not be appearing. Yes, it will appear in GSTR 2A. No, it will not appear in 3B. No, I'm not asking 3B, Mansi. I'm asking in 2A and 2B. We cannot take credit for TDS, so it will not appear in 2A, 2B. Okay. Okay, so everybody is so very confident and you are saying that yes, it will appear. But मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, read the options again. जो TDS deduct करेंगे, ठीक है, वो कहाँ पे मिलेगा आपको? We have clearly said that the supplier can take the credit in the electronic cash ledger. So this GSTR 2A and 2B जो है, this is a credit ledger. Okay. So whenever somebody charges tax to you, then it will appear in your electronic credit ledger through GSTR 2A, 2B. When a TDS is deducted, it is coming in your electronic cash ledger. For electronic cash ledger, there is no separate input tax credit ledger or there is no 2A for your electronic cash ledger. Electronic GSTR 2A is for credits and the cash what you get is not coming directly in your cash ledger. So it will not come in your GSTR 2A or 2B. Okay. So the credits of the TDS deducted will not appear in your GSTR 2A or 2B. समझे? Only those credits will come. This is not a credit, so it will not come. It will appear in your electronic cash ledger. Okay, let's proceed. Now, what is the return for TCS? TDS GSTR 7, TCS GSTR 8. Okay. This is there under 52, 3, 4, 6, and 7, and Rule 67. All e-commerce operators are liable to collect, an e-commerce operator is liable to collect TCS, and he shall furnish a monthly statement in GSTR 8. Okay, except those e-commerce operators on whom the liability is cast to make the payment. Apart from that, other e-commerce operators will collect TCS and they shall furnish a statement called GSTR 8. The last date of filing this GSTR 8 is again same 10th of the succeeding month in which TCS is collected. The TCS collector is required to be deposited by the 10th. They will report it and also make the payment by 10th. The TCS collected shall be made available electronically to the suppliers on the common portal. Now, this supplier can take this credit in his electronic cash ledger. If there are any errors observed in the TCS amount, this can be rectified. We know how this rectification happens. Rectification happens through an amendment. So in subsequent months, GSTR 8, they can do the amendment. Then this rectification is not allowed beyond the time limit of 30th November or the date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. So practically it is 30th November itself. After 30th November, they cannot do any amendment in the GSTR 8. Simple. It is included in 3B because they have to get a number of how much tax we are paying through cash and how much tax we are paying through the TDS. That's the reason it will appear there. Okay, so how we have TDS, similarly TCS, वहाँ पे GSTR 7 था, यहाँ पे GSTR 8 है. Now, next is the what are the due dates for payment of tax. We have understood this. Now let's move into what is the due dates of payment of tax. The due date for payment of taxes says that every registered person who is required to furnish a return under section 39(1). Matlab, a person who is filing a return under 39(1) is filing GSTR 3B. He is a regular taxpayer. Other than the person referred to in the provision thereto. Matlab, section 39 में एक provision आया for QRMP scheme people. So except QRMP scheme people, a regular taxpayer who's filing GSTR 3B or subsection 3 or subsection 5. Subsection 3 and subsection 5 is for a non-resident taxpayer and a TDS payer. They shall pay to the government the tax due as per such return, not later than the last date on which he is required to furnish the return. मतलब the due date for filing the return and due date for payment of taxes is one and the same. Okay, so the due date for filing for GSTR 3B is 20th and 22nd and 24th for QRMP people. So before filing the return, अगर वो आज फाइल करे तो उसके साथ ही पेमेंट करना पड़ेगा. First they pay, only then they can file the returns. Okay, so it's not possible that they file your returns and make the payment later on. That is not permitted. You have to pay and then file your returns. So your due date for payment and due date of filing for GSTR 3B, GSTR 5 and GSTR 7 is the same. Okay, GSTR 5 is for NRTP and GSTR 7 is for TDS filers. उनके लिए they have to pay and then file the return. दोनों का date same रहेगा. Okay, they are linked with the due date of filing return. However, in case of a QRMP scheme, the payment is made little differently. Okay, apart from that, for a normal taxpayer, it is the same as the due date of filing return. Ms. Pooja code, TDS deductor need to file an application within 3 days after deducting. Not as such, and within 5 days required to issue certificate to the government. Please, sir, confirm. I'm so confused. 3 days का provision नहीं आया ना. They have to deduct within 10 days. So TDS deductor we had discussed here, no? This is TCS. TDS last date for where did you get 3 days? The details of GSTR 7 shall be filed within 10th of the subsequent month. So we are saying 10th. They have to deduct it by the 10th and issue a certificate within 5 days of crediting out. मतलब 10 plus 5 15 को वो certificate देंगे और 10th को TDS deduct करेंगे. Clear? 39.5 is a NRTP. Nistala, subsection 5 is on NRTP filers. When the non-resident taxable payers files within the 20th, for them it is separate, right? For them, they have to file it along with the return itself. And subsection 3 is TDS holders. So TDS and NRTP has to pay along with the return itself. So if any liability arise at the time of filing annual return, then when will this be made? Okay. So generally, you have to make your payments with the returns, with the monthly returns and pay it. Now, in case of annual returns, you will the liability arises on the normal monthly returns itself. But if you have found any mistake in your annual returns, then you will have to make payment, right? So you will make that payment, but the due date for that payment will be considered as the original date of return itself. And then if you have paid during your annual return, you will have to pay interest for the delay also. Good question, Harish, that the return, monthly return, I have to pay file. Now I will file an annual return. I will do the correction. So then when is my due date? The due date is not your annual return. So फिर लोग क्या करेंगे? They will file monthly nil returns and they will pay all the liability at the annual returns. That is not the case. They will have to consider the liability is on the due date of the return itself. Now they are rectifying it and paying it. For the delay from that return till now, they will pay interest. Let's take the example. In the month of March, my sales is 1 lakh. I have reported by mistake 80,000 rupees. Now, during your annual return, you have found that this is a mistake. You will pay this 20,000 now. Fine. You will pay this 20,000. Now, you will have to pay interest also because the liability for that was in March. So April 20th was the due date. From April 20th till the date of your filing of annual return, you will pay the interest as well. Okay. So if a non-resident residing in India from 1st December to 1st February, then what will be the date? Residing in India, since as he come for registration, what is his period of registration? When did he get the registration? From that day, 90 days will be his validity period. Okay. So we'll take a break here for 10 minutes. Keep your questions coming up and we will continue with the other important Okay, so lot of queries. और अगर फर्निश डेट ड्यू पे हमें टैक्स देना है तो सिर्फ 35% ऑफ टैक्स की पेमेंट का बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा इफ पेमेंट ऑन एनुअल रिटर्न. दैट इज फॉर द QRMP वैशाली, वो हम डिस्कस करेंगे अभी. इन NRTP केस they should pay tax in advance prior to 5 days from the date of commencement of business. Then how we will adjust? Correct. So before commencement, prior to 5 days, they have to make a tax in advance. So it's like a deposit. And once they make the sale, they will do the reporting, right, in the normal NRTP return. Once they file the returns, there will be a tax liability. Now this tax liability, they will adjust from the tax which they have paid in advance. Okay, so liability they will report. In this liability, they will not pay this full tax because they have already paid the tax in advance. They will adjust with this advance tax. Clear, Nagraju? Sir, I didn't get the date of filing of NRTP. NRTP filing is very simple. Okay, so NRTP says that you have to file GSTR file. Along with the GSTR file, you have to make the payment. So if you're the validity period is 90 days, correct? So if take an example, Mansi, that it is from, you've got a registration from 5th of January. Your validity period is 90 days. So 5th of January you've got. Now you have using your NRTP scheme for full 90 days. So what is your period of your NRTP registration effective from? Tell me that. NRTP का ड्यू डेट मयूर आप भी समझ लीजिए कि अब हम MRTP का डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. NRTP का कि अगर नॉन रेसिडेंट टैक्सेबल पर्सन को रजिस्ट्रेशन मिलता है 5 मार्च को, तो उसका रजिस्ट्रेशन कब तक वैलिड रहेगा? उसका वैलिड रहेगा 90 डेज, मतलब मार्च, जनवरी, 5 जनवरी को मिला है. जनवरी, फेब्रवरी का एक्चुअल में 29 डेज गिनना चाहिए, बट लेट अस अज्यूम जनवरी, 5 मार्च, जैन फेब मार्च. ठीक है, जैन फेब मार्च और 5 अप्रैल. ओके, एक्चुअल में 90 डेज कंप्यूट करना चाहिए, लेकिन हम टाइम के हिसाब से बोलते हैं कि उसका 3 अप्रैल का उसका रजिस्ट्रेशन खत्म हो जाएगा. ठीक है, तब नॉट नवंबर, फ्रॉम 5 जनवरी टू 6 मार्च, जैन फेब मार्च. 6 मार्च नहीं रहेगा ना मानसी, जैन मार्च 6, इट विल बी ओनली 20 days, so it is 6th of or 3rd of April actually. ठीक है, so his period will be from, yeah, if you're considering 5th Jan, then 5th Jan it will end 90 days. So 90 days आप करोगे तब it will end on actually 2nd of April. तो उसका पीरियड है 5th Jan to 2nd of April. ठीक है, या 5th April. ठीक है, तो for that period he has to file the return. January का monthly return he will file by the 20th of February. February का return he will file by the 20th of March. Now March return he has to file before 20 days from the calendar month. March का 20 days हो जाएगा 20th April, बट उसका वैलिडिटी खत्म हो रहा है 5th of April. सो उसका ड्यू डेट हो जाएगा फॉर द मंथ ऑफ मार्च 20th April or 7 days from last date of validity, which is 5th April plus 7, 12th April. So 20th April or 12th April, whichever is earlier. So March का रिटर्न वो 12th April तक फाइल करेगा, और April का रिटर्न भी for those 5 days he will file by the 12th of April. That is what it is saying कि date of filing will be 20 days from the end of the calendar month or 7 days from the last date of validity period, whichever is earlier. Got it? Yes, Mayur, you got it correctly. Will you combinedly file for March and April? No, there'll be two separate returns, March separate, April separate. But the date will be 12th April. So we'll file two returns, one for March and one for April. Clear? Yeah, Vaishali has a question, sir. In composite dealer to regular registration by threshold limit. Yes, from composition, he is moving to regular because it's crossed the threshold limit. Then apply the registration details within 30 days from liable date and furnish stock details lying on business immediately preceding liable date. Then we get ITC of that stock from invoice date up to 1 year. Only question one, in which return furnish the stock details? Immediately the new return which he files, that is the return, okay, which he files, the first return, there he can claim it. Second question, how the GST officer know the stock is crossed the 1 year? So they will give the details, right? They will have to certify from a chartered accountant and give the stock details. The officer will not get to know. It's a self-assessment. So you will have to claim the credit and file it. And the officer can get the stock details. If he asks, you will have to provide those details. Okay. Mansi, is your question understood? Have you got your answer for your question that how the filing of NRTP happens? Okay, good. Let's proceed further in terms of term of TDS, TCS, due dates for payments. We have covered for a regular GST 3B along with the return. Now, for a QRMP scheme, you have to pay in a different manner because it is quarterly return and monthly payment. The tax due in each of the first 2 months of the quarter, right? Quarterly returns and monthly payment hai, correct? So you have to make the payment quarterly. Just 1 minute. Okay. So for payment, the tax due in each of the first 2 months of the quarter, right? So monthly payment है, तो first 2 months का आपको payment करना ही है. Third month का तो आप कर ही दोगे because third month आप GST या 3B file करोगे, so you will pay it. For the first 2 months, how you will pay is the question. The tax is due in each of the first 2 months of the quarter. This, the due which is there in the first 2 months of the quarter is to be paid by depositing a pre-filled form GST PMT06. So payment challan jo hai, we will call that as PMT06. That is a challan for payment. Now the QRMP person will make the payment for the first month and the second month by the 25th of the second of the succeeding month. So a quarter is from Jan to March, April to June, July to September, and October to December. For the month of Jan, they will make the payment by 20th of February. For the month of February, they'll make the payment by the 25th of March. Okay. Now, the option for making monthly payment of tax, okay, they have to make monthly payment. They have two options to make this payment. That is either through a fixed sum method or a self-assessment method. They have two methods. One is fixed sum method and self-assessment method. What is this fixed sum method? This fixed sum method says that you pay tax due in each of the first 2 months of the quarter. How much? 35% of the tax which is paid in cash in the return of the preceding quarter. So iske pehle, if you filed a quarterly return, then 35% of the tax what you have paid in cash, that much you pay now. That is a fixed sum method. So if you click on fixed sum method, this will automatically compute because in your previous quarter, how much amount you have paid through credit, how much amount you have paid through cash, that is available in the return. So this system will calculate automatically 35% of the tax paid in cash, okay, and deposit this in PMT06 by the 25th day of the month, correct? That is the due date. the tax liability paid in cash in the return for the last month of the immediately preceding quarter, where the return was furnished on a monthly basis. So it depends on what you have done in your previous quarter. If you have moved now to QRMP, you were a monthly payer, now you came to QRMP, then this will not come. This will come then because your previous was a monthly return. So in the last month, what payment you have made, that amount will come here, 100% of that, because in the monthly return, it will come here. If it is a quarterly return, then the quarterly tax, what you have paid, 35% of that. This is a fixed sum method. Okay. Then we'll come to this explanation. Then if it's a self-assessment method, then it's simple. You will calculate what is your outward supply for that month. You will reduce the inward ITC and pay it. So self-assessment mein you will calculate it. The system will not calculate it. Okay. System will calculate only in case of it's a fixed sum method. Okay. In a fixed sum method, 35% of the quarterly or 100% of the previous month. Clear with this? Now, the further complication is if it's a fixed sum method, no such amount will be required to be deposited. Okay. Further, they say you pay 35% or 100% of a monthly return, but this will not be required to be deposited where the balance in your electronic credit ledger or electronic cash ledger put together is sufficient. If you have coming up at the liability of 35% of say 1 lakh rupees, and you have 1 lakh sufficient in your electronic credit ledger or electronic cash ledger both put together, then you don't have to make any more payments because that is sufficient to take care of your liability. You don't have to make payment for the first month of the quarter. And in the second month of the quarter, first month ka aapka 1 lakh bata diya, second month ka 50,000 tha. Now in the second month, if you have sufficient balance of 1,50,000 plus more, then also you don't have to pay. But अगर आपका credit next month में हो गया 20,000 or 1 lakh already था, and your liability is 1,50,000, so you have only 1,20,000. To the extent of 30,000, you have to make payment. समझे? So 35,000 कैसे calculate होता है? Previous quarter जो भी cash payment है उसका 35%. अगर previously आप monthly filer थे तो उसका 100%. That is a fixed sum method. And in case of self-assessment method, taxpayers can pay the tax by considering the tax liability of inward and outward supplies and ITC available. That has to be paid in PMT 06. A registered person under QMP can claim any of these methods. Okay, they can opt for one of these methods. At the time of filing return in 3B, the amount deposited in the first 2 months, जो भी हम बोल रहे हैं for the first 2 months, whatever is the amount deposit in the first 2 months shall be debited. And at the time of filing 3B, whatever is the balance you pay, or if you have paid excess, you can claim refund. Or you can just keep it over there for making payment of the subsequent month's quarter. Samjhe hai how the payment works for QRMP? Sir, please explain fixed sum method. So in fixed sum method, I'm explaining again that under fixed sum method, you don't have to do the calculation. The system will do the calculation. How it will do? It will calculate what is the previous filing you have done. If you have not done any filing, then this will not calculate. Firstly, or any of your liability of the previous months should be paid. That will be the basis for this month's period. If you are previously filed a quarterly return, then this will apply. Okay. If you are a quarterly filers in the previous month, then 35% of the tax what you have paid through your electronic cash ledger, अगर आपने पिछले क्वार्टर में 5 लाख फॉर ईज ऑफ रेफरेंस से पिछले क्वार्टर में आपने 1 लाख का टैक्स पे किया था थ्रू इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर एंड 2 लाख थ्रू इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर, so 35% of the 1 lakh will be the amount to be paid in electronic in this month, in the first month. ठीक है? And in the second month also 35%. ठीक है? Because it says first 2 months will be 35,000 first month पे liability होगा, 35,000 second month liability होगा. Because last month आपने कैश लेजर से 1 लाख पे किया, क्रेडिट लेजर से 2 लाख पे किया, उसका कैलकुलेशन नहीं होगा क्योंकि वो कैलकुलेशन होगा कि आपका पिछले क्वार्टर में क्रेडिट था तो इस महीने भी क्रेडिट रहेगा. ठीक है? So you will pay 35% of what tax you have paid in the previous quarter. Now, if you have paid monthly returns in your previous quarter and you're moving to QRMP now, इसका मतलब पहले आप monthly return filer थे. So if in the previous month, say you're opting for QRMP in the month of Jan to March, December month का जो return रहेगा, उसमें cash में आपने 50,000 पे किया है और credit में आपने 1 lakh पे किया है, then 50,000 जो cash का payment किया है, that will be your automatic liability for this month and the next. थर्ड मंथ का क्या होगा? थर्ड मंथ का आप एक्चुअल रिपोर्ट करोगे तो उसके लिए ऑटोमेटिक कैलकुलेशन नहीं होगा. द फिक्स सम एंड द एक्चुअल कंप्यूटेशन विल वर्क ओनली फॉर फर्स्ट 2 months ऑफ द क्वार्टर. समझे? We can pay through electronic credit ledger. Yes, we can pay through electronic credit ledger also. And if that amount is sufficient, then you don't have to make the payment as well. Yes, QRMP can be made through electronic credit ledger as well, because it's not like a composition scheme, that is different. QRMP are regular taxpayers who can claim credit. Now, for the ease of reference, that is simply said that when you have a QRMP scheme, instead of paying taxes on monthly basis, you're paying on a, instead of filing on a monthly basis, you're filing on a quarterly basis. Clear हो गया? QRMP scheme. So not paying cash in last quarter. If you have not paid any amount in last quarter, then 35% of that zero. So you don't have to pay anything for the first 2 months. Good question. These methods are for the first 2 months of the quarter, right? Can we use electronic credit ledger to make full payment of tax? Yes, we can. Please give an example of fixed and self method in Hindi. हमने numbers तो English में ही रहेंगे, which I have explained. So please pay attention कि मैंने numbers का example लेके समझा दिया है. Okay. Okay. Now let's proceed further. This we understood. Next. Now, applicability of interest. What happens to the interest provision? It says that where you are under a fixed sum method, where the auto-calculated fixed sum amount for the first 2 months of the quarter is paid by the due date, then no interest will be applicable. क्योंकि आपका fixed sum method है और आपने time पे pay कर दिया, then no interest would be applicable, even if the liability for the said amount was found higher. Okay, actually, when you calculate at the end of the quarter, you find that the actual liability was more. But under a fixed sum method, it is calculating based on your previous quarter and on the previous month. So even if your actual liability is more, still you don't have to pay interest because you have calculated, because it's a fixed sum method and the system is calculated and given to you. So no interest. But if your return is filed by the due date, then also no interest, right? Because if GST or 3B of the quarter is filed by the due date and you have made the fixed sum of payment, then no interest. Where the taxpayer makes monthly payment beyond due date, 25th ka due date, and now you have delayed it, then interest is applicable for the delayed payment. Okay, from the due date of furnishing PMT till the date of actual making of payment. Ki fixed sum method to hai, but you have not made the payment by the 25th. Then for the delay, you have to pay interest. Then when form GSTR is furnished beyond, then that regular interest under section 50 will come in. Okay, if you make the payment and file the return within time, then fine. If you delay making the payment, then interest for the delayed period. If you delay filing the 3B, then the interest will be for the delayed filing of 3B. Simple. For self-assessment taxpayers, if there the interest is little scary, because if it is system computed, interest nahi lagega. But if you are calculating it, then interest will be applicable under section 50 for tax or any part payment which remains unpaid or paid beyond the due date for the first 2 months of the quarter. Which means आपने कैलकुलेट किया है तो आपका कैलकुलेशन करेक्ट होना चाहिए, लेकिन आपका कैलकुलेशन अगर गलत है तो फिर आपको इंटरेस्ट लगेगा एज अ नॉर्मल इंटरेस्ट. Cash means electronic cash credit, but not in physical cash payment. Yes, cash means electronic cash ledger. 36% नहीं, 35%. Okay. In the 35% for 1 or 2 months payment in tax in cash or credit, either of them. It could be you can make the payment in cash. So 35% when it is fixed sum amount, then 35% will be through cash itself, not through credit. Because that 35%, the proportion what they're calculating of the previous months of cash. So this 35% you have to make payment in cash only, not through credit. Okay. Next part is on any other returns and statements. What are the other returns? First return, right? Now, the first return what we file is applicable to a person who is voluntary registered or a person who is required to be registered and they have registered within the time. Okay. Now, say for an example, understand this. I am liable for registration on May 1st of 2020. I apply for registration within 30 days, right? When I apply for registration within 30 days, which means what? I'm applying within time because the time limit for registration is 30 days. I apply for the registration within time and I receive the registration on June 15th because officer has to verify, correct? He is verify and tell that the actual date of registration is May 30th itself, no problem. Okay. So in that case, when will be my first return? I've got the registration in June 15th. So my first return will be July 20th. So this is the concept of first return. But the important part is from the date I was liable to registration, and for this period from May 1st to May 30, I do not have a registration. So I can issue a revised invoice for this period because the recipient has to claim the credit. So I can issue a registration within 30 days, but I've got the registration on July 15th, which is before 30 days. So I have to give a revised invoice by the June 15th. Fine. I have to issue revised invoice within 30 days of registration. And in my first return, I have to May and June and file it. Because for the May, I did not have the registration, but I will give revised invoice and give the detail of outward supplies made during such period in the first return, which is filed by me after grant of registration. So when the first return, I will file for the month of June, okay, which is from June 15th to June 30th. I will include the transactions of May also. Got it? Is there an option for choosing applicable rate of interest? No. The option is for choosing the payment, but not for choosing interest. Interest based on what system you opt for, it should be calculated on that basis. Interest is not automatically calculated. We will have to calculate. Sir, is interest is calculated on different amount or on an entire amount? On differential amount, not on the entire amount. Always on the differential amount. Here, Ms. Radhika. Slide number 60. ओके 60 वैशाली सिंपल है आपको नॉट ओके हिंदी में बता देता हूँ कि आप जब रजिस्टर करने के लिए अप्लाई करते हो, ठीक है, आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन वॉलेंट्री रजिस्ट्रेशन हो या ड्यू डेट ऑफ रजिस्ट्रेशन हो, वो बताता है कि आपको 30 दिन के अंदर अप्लाई करना है। आपने 30 दिन के अंदर अप्लाई कर दिया है, ठीक है, लेकिन आपका लायबिलिटी फॉर रजिस्ट्रेशन May 1st को है। इसका मतलब May 1st से जो भी आप सप्लाई करोगे उसके ऊपर आप जीएसटी चार्ज करोगे, लेकिन जीएसटी चार्ज करने के लिए आपके पास जीएसटी नंबर तो नहीं है, करेक्ट। लेकिन आपके इनवॉइस में आप जीएसटी इंक्लूड करके चार्ज कर रहे हो। आपके कस्टमर्स को आप बोल रहे हो कि आपका जीएसटी नंबर है ना, तो मैं आपको क्रेडिट दे दूंगा। एज सुन एज मेरा रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट आ जाएगा तब मैं आपको क्रेडिट दे दूंगा, ठीक है। तो आप विद इन टाइम लिमिट अप्लाई कर देते हो तो आपका इफेक्टिव डेट ऑफ रजिस्ट्रेशन हो जाएगा May 1। करेक्ट। जब May 1 का रजिस्ट्रेशन हो जाएगा तब May 1 टू May 30 आपने अप्लाई किया है और आपको मिल रहा है June 15। तो इनफैक्ट May 1 टू June 15 का जो भी आपने इनवॉइस रेज किया आप उसका रिवाइज इनवॉइस कर सकते हो विथ योर जीएसटी नंबर, ताकि सामने वाले को क्रेडिट मिल सके। करेक्ट। तो June 15 से 30 डेज तक आपको टाइम मिलेगा ये पीरियड का इनवॉइस रिवाइज करने के लिए। तो आप जब रिवाइज करोगे तब आपका फर्स्ट रिटर्न जो होगा, जून का ड्यू डेट कब है, मंथली में June 20 है, क्वार्टरली में June 22 और June 24 है। तो आप फर्स्ट रिटर्न जो फाइल करोगे उसमें आप मे का ट्रांजैक्शन भी इंक्लूड कर सकते हो, ये बोलता है फर्स्ट रिटर्न। ठीक है। नाउ एनुअल रिटर्न। एनुअल रिटर्न आता है सेक्शन 44 में, जो बोलता है कि ऑल रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन एक्सेप्ट कैजुअल टैक्सेबल पर्सन, नॉन रेसिडेंट टैक्सेबल पर्सन, इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर, टीसीएस एंड टीडीएस कलेक्टर एंड ओआईडीएआर सर्विस प्रोवाइडेड वाले एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करेंगे। तो ये 6 तरह के लोग एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करेंगे। 5 तरह के लोग, सीटीपी, एनआरटीपी, इनपुट सर्विस डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर, टीसीएस एंड टीडीएस को एक में मिला दिया है, और ओआईडीए। तो ये 5 कैटेगरी के लोग एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करेंगे, बाकी सब लोग एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल करेंगे। इवन अ कॉम्पोजिशन डीलर एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल करेगा। ठीक है। बाई वेन? बाई 31 दिसंबर ऑफ द नेक्स्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर। 22-23 का हमने बताया 31 दिसंबर 2023, 23-24 का 31 दिसंबर 2024। कौन से फॉर्मेट में? फॉर्मेट का नाम है GSTR 9, और कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम वालों के लिए स्पेशल है GSTR 9A। एनुअल रिटर्न में क्या होता है, जो भी मैंने मंथली रिटर्न्स में गलती की है उसको मैं रेक्टिफिकेशन कर सकता हूँ। कंबाइंड जो मंथली रिटर्न का डिटेल है उसको मैं एनुअल रिटर्न में फाइल करूंगा। और जिसका टर्नओवर मोर देन 5 करोड़ के ऊपर है तो फिर वो एडिशनल एक सेल्फ सर्टिफाइड रिकंसिलिएशन स्टेटमेंट करेगा, जिसे कहते हैं GSTR 9C। उसमें क्या रिकंसिलिएशन करेगा? रिकंसिलिएशन बिटवीन द ऑडिटेड फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स एंड द सप्लाईज व्हाट आई हैव डिक्लेयर्ड इन द एनुअल रिटर्न। सो दिस विल बी अ रिकंसिलिएशन बिटवीन 9 and my financial statements. This is what I will do in my annual return. Okay. Ishtala is saying, what about the details of goods for April? If the supply made in relation to April in the month of May, will these details be included in May, sir? If the supply are made in April, now including it in May, then it will be part of your May return. But it is actually invoice date is April, so you have to pay interest for the month of delayed inclusion in the month of May for the April supplies. Okay. Sir, without getting GST, how can I charge GST? So you are applying for registration on time. So you can charge GST or you can't charge GST. You can actually charge GST because you have applied for registration. CTP will file annual return. नहीं दिव्यांशी, CTP का exclusion है ना यहाँ पे, that we have said that CTP के लिए annual return applicable नहीं है। If receipt of certification of GST was on 22nd March, जैसे उस एग्जाम्पल में आप बोल रहे हो, if it is on 22nd March, समझा नहीं, what is your question, मयूर? Composition dealer, composition dealer have to file 2 annual returns. Yes, one is GSTR 4, which he will file by 30th April, and annual return under 9A by 31st December. Correct. So annual return हो जाएगा। First return means GSTR 1 and 3B. Yes, the first returns what you file, the first GSTR 1 and 3B is your first return. Other than the above 5%, everyone have to file annual return mandatory, or there is any minimum limit for turnover. So they give yearly, they give an exemption saying that for the law purpose it is same, but yearly notifications is issued. Like till now, all the notifications are issued which says that up to 2 crores of turnover, you don't have to file an annual return. So it depends on the notifications for the every year. And up to 5 crores, you have to file only annual return, and above 5 crores, you have to file annual return plus reconciliation statement. So is there no restriction in my monthly returns? If there are no rectifications in my monthly returns, what am I supposed to file in the annual returns? See, the monthly returns, what we file, and the books of accounts, there can be some variances, right? If there's no rectification in the annual returns, it's fine. But if there is some difference between your books and your annual returns, that you will have to correct it. That correction also you can do in your annual returns. Say in your books you had a turnover of 10 crores. In your monthly returns you had reporters 9 crores, or say you're saying a category of below 5 crores, Venisha, that you had a turnover of 4 crores in your books. In your monthly returns filing, somehow you have reported only 3 crores 75 lakhs. So to the extent of 25 lakhs, you can pay it at the time of filing annual return. So annual return time, you will consolidate your books and do a comparison of your books and your returns. And generally, we find that there will be some mistakes which gets noted. Liable for registration on 1st Jan, applied for registration on 10th Jan, received certificate of registration on 20th Jan. Then for the period from 1st Jan to 10th Jan, okay, or say 22nd Jan itself, from 1st to 22nd, you have made supplies on which GST have charged. That rectification, that return you will file in February. So your Feb will be the first return on which from 1st to 22nd Jan, whatever supplies you made, you will include it in the month of February. Okay, that will become a normal return, but that will be your first return. But for the supplies, what you made from 1st Jan to 10th Jan, Mayur, you can give a revised return, revised invoice. Only in that case, you can give a revised return, revised invoice, and you can include and customer. Okay. Final return is the return which has to be filed at the time of cancellation. A registered person whose registration is cancelled or surrendered. Either you have cancelled or the officer has cancelled it. You will have to file a final return in GSTR 10 within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the date of order of the cancellation, whichever is later. Here it is later, otherwise it was all earlier. Here it is later. That is 3 months from the date of cancellation or 3 months from the date of cancellation, the order of the cancellation, whichever is later. Details of inward supplies by UIN holders. When a UIN holder is issued registration certificate for claiming refund or otherwise, he has to file a return in GSTR 11. He has to file a monthly return to be filed by 20th of the following month. Every 20th he will claim, he will file it. Form GSTR 11 consists of auto-populated information and is updated by the supplier, and thus the UIN holder is not allowed to add or modify any details in GSTR 11. तो जो भी हम सप्लाई करते हैं यूआईएन होल्डर को उसके GSTR 11 में दिखेगा और यूआईएन होल्डर GSTR 11 को फाइल करेगा. फर्स्ट रिटर्न में आईटीसी क्लेम कर सकते हैं. हाँ, वी कैन क्लेम इट. यस, व्हाई नॉट. एनुअल रिटर्न का फॉर्म नंबर क्या है? GSTR 9 और 9C. हमने देखा है ना वो स्लाइड में. GSTR 9 इज एनुअल रिटर्न और रिकंसिलिएशन अबव 5 crores हो तो 9 और 9C दोनों फाइल करना चाहिए. नाउ रिविजन ऑफ रिटर्न्स, हम वही बोल रहे थे कि रिटर्न्स फाइल्ड कैन नॉट बी रिवाइज्ड इन केस ऑफ एनी एरर्स और omission the return can be corrected through an amendment in the subsequent return. Since returns are based on transaction levels, any errors in a transaction, that is an invoice, a credit note, or debit note, can be amended. These can be amended in the future GSTR1 file. Similar impact has to be given in GSTR3B. मतलब GSTR3 में से वैल्यूज जाते हैं. अगर आपका ओरिजिनल मंथली GSTR1 में 1 लाख था, आप उसको रेक्टिफाई करके अमेंड करके 1,10,000 करते हो. सो इस मंथ का जो GSTR3B फाइल करोगे, आपका रेगुलर सेल्स रहेगा, उसमें आप 10,000 ऐड करके टैक्स और इंटरेस्ट पे करोगे. दैट इज द effect of this revision of returns या amendment of the return. Okay, so similar impact has to be given in 3B. In case this results in additional liability, it has to be paid with interest. Now, rectification of errors or omissions are not permitted, which is discovered on account of scrutiny. अगर स्क्रूटिनी के टाइम कुछ करते हैं, तब उसको आप GSTR1 और 3B में नहीं कर सकते, उसको आपको अलग से पे करना पड़ेगा. आपके मंथली रिटर्न में आप उसको इंक्लूड नहीं कर सको व्हेन if that rectification is observed at the time of scrutiny, audit, inspection or enforcement activity carried out by the tax authorities. Therefore, the ITC also cannot be passed. अगर मैं ITC नॉर्मल केसेस में GSTR1 1 लाख है, लेकिन उसको रेक्टिफाई करके 110 देता हूं, तो सामने वाले को क्रेडिट भी 1,10,000 पे मिल जाएगा. करेक्ट. लेकिन जब मैं रेक्टिफिकेशन करता हूं ऑफिसर के पकड़ने पे, तब मैं रिटर्न में रेक्टिफाई नहीं कर सकता हूं और सामने वाले को उसका क्रेडिट भी, नया क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. इसका मतलब क्या है, जो एक्स्ट्रा लायबिलिटी है वो मैं कस्टमर से नहीं कलेक्ट कर सकता हूँ, मेरे जेब से कलेक्ट पे करना पड़ेगा. Time limit for making rectification, that is 20th October, not 20th October, it's actually 30th November. 30th November or the annual return, whichever is earlier. Important point for returns is a return is considered as a valid return only when the self-assessed tax has been paid. Okay, so only when I pay the taxes and then file the return, it is a valid return. In any case, without payment, मुझे return तो file करने ही नहीं देगा. So it's only theoretical कि invalid return हो सकता है क्या? Invalid return हो ही नहीं सकता है, because if I don't pay, then I cannot file a return. You have to file the previous month's returns, only then the filing of the current month is permitted. ऐसा नहीं कि previous month में बहुत सारा liability था, तो skip करके I'll file this month's return, not permitted. You have to file your previous month's return, only then you can file current month's return. Return need to be electronically signed, either through DSC or through e-sign verification through your Aadhaar-based OTP, and through electronic verification code, wherein it is sent to a mobile number of the authorized signatory. So 3 modes of verifying your returns. How the UIN holder gets the return? So when they file this UIN, this GSTR 11, along with them, then they will file a refund application separately. Okay. What are the other points to note? When the taxpayer has multiple registration in the state, then they cannot file one return for all the registrations. They have to file separate returns for each registration. But if they have one registration for multiple branches, then they will file one return. So based on number of registrations, the returns has to be filed. All returns have to be filed online only, no manual filing. Annual returns are based on financial statements and not just the total of the tax periods. So it's based on annual statements and financial statements. Common return for CGST, IGST, and SGST, and says no separate returns, one common return for all the 3 taxes. No revised returns. So revision is possible only through an amendment. So a return cannot be completely revised. Next month's return, what I find, in that I can do the amendment. Then nil return is mandatory to file in case of no transactions. This we understood. Non-filing of returns needs of consequence of tax, penalty, and even cancellation. So in case of composition, 3 months, and in case of regular practitioner, 6 months. If you don't file, you're liable for cancellation. Then late filing is allowed, but with late fees. If you do a filing late, Yes, you can file it, but late fees and interest. Okay. These are the important points to note in case of a return filing, which is not there in your material. From a practical experience, I've highlighted this. Then what happens in case of default in furnishing return? If the notice is issued, if you default in furnishing return, a notice is issued electronically to a registered person who has failed to furnish any of the following returns: monthly returns to be filed under Section 39, annual returns, final returns, or TCS returns. The notice will require the registered person to file the return within 15 days. Okay, so they will issue a notice if you default, if you don't file your returns. Then, if there is any delay, then the statement in GSTR 1 or 3B or GSTR 10 or a TCS statement, then you have to pay a late filing fee of 100 rupees per day or 5,000 rupees. And for a statement of annual return, 100 rupees per day or 0.25%, whichever is less. Okay, the amount is actually double because this amount is for CGST. Then the amount will become CGST plus SGST. Then now there is a rationalization, like how we had discussed that there were 2 days, 13 and 20th for a NRTP. Similarly, here also you have this rate which is there in the law, and it said that the commissioner has a power to relax these late filing fees. So there is a rationalization of this late fees, which is mentioned in these slides. For GSTR 1 and 3B, we'll explain this and others are self-explanatory. For GSTR 1 and 3B, if the registered person has nil outward supplies and if he's filing a nil return, now nil return, if he is delayed, then the late filing fees is 500 rupees or 20 rupees for every day, whichever is lower. So if he is delayed by, say, 100 days, 100 into 20 is 2,000 rupees. So 2,000 is higher than 500, so he will pay only 500 rupees. Okay, so whichever is lower, he will pay. Registered person in the category of other than that one, other than nil return, but if his turnover is less than 1.5 crore, then 2,000 or 50 rupees per day. And if the turnover is more than 1.5 crores, but below 5 crores, then 5,000 or 50, above 5,000, 10,000 or 50 rupees per day, whichever is lower. This is for each GSTR 1 separately and GSTR 3B separately. Then where the is delayed filing of GSTR 4. Okay. In case of GSTR 4, 500 rupees or 20 rupees. And register person other than those above, then it will be 2,000 or 50 rupees. Then delay in filing annual returns, 50 rupees for per day or 0.4%, or 100 rupees or 0.4%, or 200 rupees or 0.5%. So this is things which we have to learn, nothing to explain here. For delayed filing of GSTR 7, the amount will be 50 rupees per day or 2,000 rupees, whichever is lower for a TDS person. Okay. All self-explanatory, but very important to remember them. Now we'll go to GST practitioner. Who is a GST practitioner? A person who wants to get enrolled as a GST practitioner. He should qualify for certain criteria. He should be a person of Indian citizen. He should be of a sound mind and solvent. He should not be declared as an insolvent, and who is not convicted for any offense with imprisonment for more than 2 years. He will be disqualified. He should not be convicted. He should be a graduate or PG in commerce, law, banking, or retired state commerce officer or CBC officer, or any degree who's passed final examination of ICAI, ICSI, or the cost accountant. Then you will be eligible. So, if you ICAI pass karte ho, then you can be a GST practitioner, subjected या आप किसी offense में convicted नहीं हो, right? So only Indian citizen cap for it. Non-Indian citizens cannot opt. What is the prescribed qualification? You should be holding graduation or acquired a degree from foreign university, or you should pass any examination that is notified by the government, or you should have passed the CA, CS, or cost accountants examination. An application in prescribed form may be made electronically. आप application file कीजिए, application will be scrutinized, फिर आपको एक GSTP certificate मिलेगा. अगर reject हो गया, then to remain enrolled unless he passes sub examination. No person enrolled as a GSTP is eligible unless you make write a exam. And अगर नॉन क्वालिफाइड पर्सन है, अगर नॉन सीए नॉन सीएस है, तो उनको एक एग्जाम अलग से लिखना पड़ेगा. Then furnish what once you become a GST practitioner, तो फिर क्या benefit है? Why should you become a GST practitioner? You can furnish details of outward and inward supplies. You can furnish monthly, annual or final returns. So instead of taxpayer filing it, you can file it. So there are two things. One is the GST का login जो है taxpayer का, वो आप लेके आप फाइल कर सकते हो, या फिर वो उनका login नहीं देंगे. They will authorize you as a GST practitioner, and from you as a GST practitioner, you can log in and file these documents. What are things you can do? You can furnish the details of outward and inward supplies, file the monthly returns, make deposit for credit in the electronic cash ledger, furnish information for e-way bill, furnish details of challans, make an application for amendment of cancellation of enrollment, file an intimation to pay tax under composition scheme, file a claim of refund, file an application of registration or amendment. But इसके लिए confirmation from registered person will be sought for these two things. क्योंकि आप refund claim कर रहे हो, फिर taxpayer बोलता है मैंने तो मैंने फाइल किया, taxpayer this GSTP फाइल किया, that he cannot say. तो इसीलिए उनका confirmation चाहिए. लेकिन बाकी चीजों के लिए he cannot say so. If he is authorized you, then he is authorized for everything. And also allowed to appear as an authorized representative before any officer. अगर कुछ inquiry आती है, तब you can appear as an authorized representative. Okay, that was all on the returns. Now we'll take some MCQs. 0.5% of which 0.5% of the turnover, Priyanka. Okay, let's take some MCQs. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can throw that up. First one, answer is A, right? Everybody is given a right answer. The details of outward supplies is not 20th, it is 11th, GSTR1. Details of outward supplies shall include invoice, credit notes, debit note, revised invoice, all of the above. Correct. Everybody is given a right answer. One is A and two is D. Third one, the details submitted by the outward supplier in form GSTR1 shall be furnished to the recipient regular dealer in which form? Aggregate turnover means one PAN or one GST number, one PAN, not GST number. Aggregate turnover is always one PAN all over India. Third one, answer is C, right? Third one is C. And fourth one, okay, third one is C, and fourth one is D. Correct. Third one is C, and fourth one is D. Very simple. Fifth one, 5D. Correct. 5C में OIDR नहीं दिया. You're right. You're right, Harshit. 6. Details submitted by supply and GST are communicated to the registered person in bank. सबका all time favorite option. Yes, yes, you're right. 6. Somebody is saying B, somebody is saying C. A lot of confusion. The correct answer is not B because आप data entry करते हो उसके बाद नहीं है. You do data entry whenever, but 2A will appear after the due date of GSTR1. Okay, so after the due date, so हमने 13th का है तो 14th को दिखेगा. After the due date of GSTR1, it will appear. So correct answer is C. Yeah, Himlata, please explain difference. Yeah, let's move to, so sixth one, correct answer is C. Move to seventh question. A registered taxable person other than ISD, NRTP, and person paying tax under 1015 shall file its periodical return in which form? So please explain difference of rights between a CA and GST practitioner. Yeah, GST practitioner. Now, if you're a CA, you cannot file the returns from your login. You have to go to client's login and file it. But if a CA plus GST practitioner, then you can file a client's login from your login itself. As a GST practitioner, you will get a separate login. From that login, you can file the client's details and other things, what is there. So GST practitioner, if you have a login, then you can do those things from your login. But as a CA, you cannot do it. So with CA, you have to be a GST practitioner to do those things which I mentioned in the slide. Question number 7. Sorry, 7 is here. Okay, one more question. So the point of giving MCQ is to make you understand if there's any question also you could ask. There are other MCQs I've mentioned around 15 MCQs. We'll discuss around 8 MCQs and we'll be closing for the day. So how is your experience on the returns part overall? Did you enjoy the returns? I think this was the most enjoyable session for me compared to the other sessions. 7, why people are getting confused? It is D. Why is people seeing C? Form GSTR 4. GSTR 4 is for it's a GSTR 3B, a registered person other than IST, non-resident taxpayer and paying tax under 10. So GSTR 4 is filed by a person who's paying GSTR 10. We have said other than a person paying tax under 10. So the correct answer is 3B. How come people are saying it is C? Great, Sri Lakshmi. If it is helpful to you, and really happy that you will be good, successful in your exams. 8th, last question. Every taxpayer paying tax under Section 10 shall file the return in just like mountain trekking. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's headache. Yeah, that's true. Awesome. Very good, sweetie. Good, Durga Datta. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Priyanka. Trickier chapter, but you made it super easier. Thanks for teaching us and making GST easy. Thank you, Aisha. Enjoyed all session. Thank you, Miss Tala. If returns are filed by GSP, then self-assessment return will be invalid. No, it is still self-assessment, but instead of he assessing, he is given to a GSP. Still, it will be a self-assessment itself. He has authorized somebody to do it, right? So when you appear before a high court, you will see that lawyer is appearing, right? So it doesn't mean that the company will not get affected. Instead of company appearing, they have authorized somebody. So they have themselves given that authorization, not that the officer has given authorization. So since the authorization is given by the taxpayer to a GSP, it is still a self-assessment. He has given his work to somebody else, but the primary responsibility is his itself. Eighth one. Thank you, Mayur. Eighth one, a lot of confusion. People are saying C, D, A. Luckily, nobody said B. So, composition taxpayer paying tax shall file the return in GSTR 4. Okay, GSTR 4 is the annual return. CMP is 18th of the month succeeding the quarter. But we are talking about GSTR 4, which is the annual return, is by the 30th of the month succeeding the year. That the correct answer is D. Okay, not B. CMP and GST. Yeah, yes, Mayur, you could ask. So, CMP and annual return file paying every taxpayer paying tax shall file the return. The return is filed We said no, annual return, quarterly payment. So annual return is GSTR 4, which will be filed by the 30th of the month succeeding the year. Okay. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you very much. So we'll catch tomorrow on the problem solving session, which will be the most interesting session for 3 days. Let us try to solve a lot of questions. Based on your feedback from tomorrow, I will develop other questions for day after tomorrow onwards. Thank you, Lokesh. Thank you, Venisha. Tomorrow, we will discuss on problem solving. Yes, thank you. Explain 8th MCQ. Okay, 8th MCQ is what is the question is where every taxpayer paying tax under Section 10. Who is a Section 10 taxpayer? I'm written composition levy here. In question, you may not find a composition levy. Section 10, when you say, you should remember composition levy. He shall file the return. Okay, GSTR 3, 4, or 4. First is it's not GSTR 3 is not applicable for him. So GSTR 4. 4 is an annual return. Annual return he will file by the 30th of the month succeeding the year. Why 18th is given here is to confuse you because they will file the CMP 08. That is the payment by the 18th of the month succeeding the quarter. But returns will be through GSTR 4 itself. Okay. Yeah, returns is lengthy, but yes, I have taken it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miss Devi. Yeah, notes uploading, I will still request them. I am sure that before my session of day after tomorrow, I'll tell them to upload it. Otherwise, I will not continue the session. So that then they will upload it, everything on time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pooja. Thank you, everyone. Section 10, do file monthly? No, Section 10, don't file monthly. Thank you, everyone.